All right, let's dive into driving traffic to your funnel using Spears or outbound, right? Now, what do I mean when I'm talking about outbound? Outbound is you going to them. And in some ways, we've actually already done this. We've done some outbound, like harvesting people that have engaged in your content, okay? Or when you do warm outreach, technically it's outbound, okay? But what I'm talking about here for the purposes of this lesson and what we're gonna be doing with Spears, I'm talking about cold outreach, right? I'm talking about generating leads using outbound strategies with people that don't know who you are, right? So think of warm outreach as kind of like catching up with an old friend. Like, hey, how's it going? You can personalize the message, things like that. You have some rapport to a degree. Same thing with people that have engaged in your content. There's some rapport that's already built. When we're talking about outbound here, it's more of like you're the new guy at the party, right? Like you're making the rounds, you're introducing yourself, and you're having to establish that rapport very quickly. And that's what we're talking about with Spears. So warm outreach, people that you have rapport with, people that you've engaged with to some degree, we put into seeds, harvesting that attention. Cold outreach, Spears. All right, so all outbound sits somewhere on a continuum, from high volume to highly personalized. And when we're talking about high volume, we're talking about mass emails. Are you sending hundreds or thousands of emails a day? Are you doing automated social selling? Okay, like are you selling on LinkedIn in DMs using automation? Or if you're using calls, are you making 200 outbound phone calls a day? Like that's the high volume model. The personalized model is just the flip side of that, right? Like it's one-off emails with personalized video to people that you've researched a bunch about, okay? Or instead of automation on LinkedIn and selling in DMs and things like that, maybe you're leaving highly personalized voice messages that you can use on LinkedIn's mobile app, right? Like you can leave a voice message less than a minute. Maybe that's really a personalized approach that you use. Or you're making personalized cold calls to really targeted lists, right? Like this is where you're making 10, 20, maybe 30 calls a day, but you know exactly who you're calling. You've got some background, things like that. So you've got everything from personalized to high volume. Now, within that, there's all kinds of other choices, right? And we're going to go through these, so don't get overwhelmed by it. But these are just the things that you can be thinking about when you're thinking about how do I set up outbound. For example, where do you go to get your data? Like you can buy it, you can scrape it. Where are you going to get your list? Okay. Which channel are you going to leverage? Are you going to go to email? Are you going to use the phone? Are you going to use LinkedIn or some other social media platform? What's your tech stack going to be? Okay. Like every one of these choices that you choose, every channel has its own kind of unique tech stack that goes with it. And if you choose the channel, then you've probably got to choose the tech that goes with it. And then of course, how are you going to message this thing? Right? Like, are you going to send one email or are you going to send 10 emails? Are you going to send one DM or are you going to have a sequence with 15 different DMs in there? Are you going to make one phone call or 10 phone calls? And then obviously, what are you going to say on all that? These are some of the choices. Now, within that, you've got all these other considerations to help you make some of these choices, right? Like maybe you've got a specific skill set. Maybe you've done phone sales for 10 or 15 years. Maybe you're a good writer and you want to use email. Maybe you're really good with tech and you want to use some automation. Okay, so what skill sets do you have? What's the strength and the location of your brand? Do you have a brand that's built up in a specific area or on a specific platform or on a specific channel already? That's one thing to consider. Do you have any existing sources of traffic? And can you leverage that or use a channel that plays really well off of that? Like if I'm on LinkedIn already, I probably want to figure out a way to leverage that where my brand is and where I'm already creating content and get the best bang for the buck before I go set up something from complete scratch. Then there's like, do you have more time or do you have more money, right? If you have more money than time, maybe you're buying technology and using tools like automation, things like that. If you have more time than money, then maybe you're doing personalized outreach, right? Like personalized voice messages. This affects whether you think through, do I hire some freelancers? Do I hire some copywriters? Or do I just DIY this? Do I buy tech to do things? Do I do manual work? Do I buy the data? Do I scrape the data? So, do you have more money than time than money? Okay. Are you tech savvy or not? Right? Like if you're not really tech savvy, maybe you don't want to start with like a really high volume cold email campaign where you're going to have to warm up emails and get some different domains and use email cleaning tools and email sending software. It's not overwhelming, but I mean, if you're not a techie person, maybe that's not the route that you go. But this is something to consider. And then obviously the most important piece is what's your audience going to respond to. Most of these considerations are about you, your skill set, your capabilities, your resources, where you want to land, where you have a brand. But at the end of the day, the real question is, what is your audience going to respond to? All right. Now, good news and bad news. There is no right and wrong, right? Like if you say, I want to do high volume, strictly automated, you can do that. If you want to, it will work. Like you can make it work. It's the beauty of Outbound. If you want to do low touch, high personalized, like low volume type of deal, you can absolutely make that work. And the reason I say this is good news or bad news is, on the one hand, it's great news because this is the ultimate optionality, right? Like I have all these different choices and things to go through, and I can make them work. The bad news is it's the ultimate optionality, right? Like, so it's really easy to get overwhelmed with, okay, which one do I choose? Like, do I want volume? Do I want, phone? Do I want email? Do I want social selling? So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to walk you through how to get an outbound campaign up and rolling. All right. And I'm going to share a framework that works for virtually any of these campaigns, but every campaign is going to have its own nuances, right? Like you've got different tech, you've got different sales cycles, you've got different offers, you have different audiences. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk you through this framework, and then I'm going to walk you through a specific example of me setting up one of these campaigns to see what I mean, right? Like step by step. So I'm going to do the framework and the process, and this applies to virtually any tactic that you're going to choose. And then I'm going to walk through and specifically apply that framework with an example so you can see it in action. Okay, let's dive into the framework first. So this is a 10-step framework, and it's a process. Basically, it comes down to, first, we're going to pick our channel. Then we're going to pick our strategy. Then we're going to get the list. Then we're going to clean the list if it's necessary. Then we'll build our tech stack. Then we'll create the reporting. Then we'll dial in our messaging, start our outreach, start our measurement, and then we start to iterate and optimize. Okay, so let's go into each one of these, and we'll talk a little bit more about what that means. All right, so first, when we talk about pick your channel, okay, now you've got a lot of channels for distribution. You've got a lot of choices. You've got email, you can do cold email. You've got cold outbound on phone. Obviously, you've got generic, like general social selling. You've got LinkedIn, which is kind of its own animal because it's a different platform. It's built for business. It's got different features like who saw your profile, things like that. So you've got direct mail, actual letters. You've got a combination of it, right? Like you've got, if you want to drop an email to people and then drop them a phone and then hit them on LinkedIn. So you can do a combination of these. And there are other channels, obviously, that I haven't hit here. You don't have to pick just one of these, right? Like, and most of the data will actually say, if you take a couple of these and put them together, you can get better results, right? Like a direct mail plus a phone campaign is going to work better than just a phone campaign, or an email plus a phone campaign is going to work better than just a phone campaign. But the trade-off is complexity. You don't want to make this so complicated that you never really get it off the ground, that you never really get executing. But you also don't want to make it so simple that it doesn't work. Okay, so for the most part, I'm going to focus on email and social selling. Okay, some calling. But no, I've put together multi-million-dollar strategies for all of these channels recently, right? So direct mail included. So don't let anyone tell you things like direct mail don't work. They do, right? Billboards work. Like I'm agnostic to the specific channel. What matters more is how you do it. But because most of what we're doing is getting clients online and building up our channels and building up our outbound, I'm going to focus again on email and social selling and maybe some calling. Cool. All right. Now, some questions to help you choose when you're thinking about the channel specifically. Okay. One is, where does your audience hang out? Right? Are they more likely to be scrolling through LinkedIn, or are they more likely to be email people? You've got to meet them where they are. Okay. So think about your audience. And again, going back to other lessons, make sure you're using facts here. Like, don't just make assumptions like my audience isn't on LinkedIn or my audience isn't on whatever channel. But try to validate that, right? Go do some research and determine where is my audience and what has the highest likelihood of success, okay? And then what's worked before, right? Have you had any success with a particular channel in the past, right? If it's not broke, don't fix it. If you have found something that has worked before, maybe you can leverage that, okay? Another question that you can think through is, what is your skill set? I mentioned this a couple slides ago, but do you or your team have a skill set that you can take advantage of right now, right? Are you an awesome copywriter? Well, then email might be your jam. Are you just a natural, I have the gift of gab and I'm a great salesperson type of person? Well, like maybe calling is actually best for you, or, voice messages or something like that. So think through, what's your skill set? What are your strengths or that of your team? And does that give you some advantage to ramping up a specific channel on outbound? What's the landscape out there, right? Are your competitors all on LinkedIn but ignoring email? Well, it's like we say sometimes, like it's better to zig when they zag, or better to zag when they zig, whatever it is. But what's the competition doing? And look at that. Maybe they're doing it because it works, and maybe they're doing it because everybody else is doing it. It's the opportunity for you to get on a channel that nobody else is on. I heard somebody recently say, hey, you know what? Nobody's paying attention to Reddit anymore. And they're starting conversations and finding ways to engage through things like Reddit and Quora, okay? So don't be afraid of doing something different than what everybody else is doing. And then what resources do you have, right? Like, do you have more time than money or more money than time? It may affect, do you decide to go with, tech and SaaS solutions and automation, or do you go with something that's more high touch, more personalized, and just has higher conversion? Again, no right or no wrong, but these are some of the questions that I would think through when I'm determining, all right, which channel am I going to start with? But that's the first thing we want to do. We want to determine, where are we going to go? Okay, are we going to be using email? Are we going to be using LinkedIn? Are we going to be using a specific channel and get that dialed in? Okay, then once you've got your channel picked, what we're going to do is we're going to pick our strategy. And again, this goes back to, where are we going to sit on this continuum, right? We've got personalized, we've got high volume, we've got everything in between. Now, here's the thing. I'll tell you, when you're thinking about this, some people will say, well, you can't really sell like high ticket services with automation. And I call bullshit. Like, yes, you can. You absolutely can. You can't sell the whole service. You can't have the whole process be automated, but you can automate portions of it, like the initial email or the initial message or the initial connection request. So you can absolutely use high volume to sell high ticket services. I have found you get good R&D from research and development from both personalized outreach and high volume outreach, right? When you're doing personalized outreach and you're getting a feedback loop and you're hearing the responses, it's a good source of R&D. When you're running high volume, you can look at the metrics. The one challenge for some people is they get one piece of negative feedback on personalized outreach and they're like, okay, well, the data clearly says like this isn't going to work. So just be cautious of that. But we want to pick, where are we going to sit on this continuum? Okay, so here are a couple questions that you can consider. Can you shortcut the learning curve if there's a tech stack, right? Are there some tools that you're already familiar with and that you already know how to set up and use without a huge investment of time on your part? Do you already know LinkedIn pretty well? Do you already know Sales Navigator very well? Do you already know how to use some automation tools? Do you already know some email softwares? Do you already know how to do phone sales or set that up from a technical standpoint? So think through your team's skill set and capabilities and go, all right, are there some things that we already know how to shortcut the learning curve, because that can be an advantage in shortcutting the process to getting results. Second thing is, can you leverage an existing skill set? I know I've mentioned this a couple of times, but don't ignore the skill set that you've already got, that you're bringing to the table. Again, copywriting, maybe selling or experience in phone sales. If there's something that you feel like, hey, you know what, I'm just really, really not good in that. From a coaching standpoint, I normally challenge you, but for the sake of getting this damn thing up and rolling, then don't pick that thing, right? Like let's find something that we feel like we can get up off the ground, that we're leveraging our skill set really well. And then how concerned are you about scale at this point? Okay, if you just need to get a few clients in the door and you're at a stage where, in Maslow's hierarchy of business needs, cash is right at the bottom, right? Like, hey, I just need to get some cash in the door. You don't need to worry about scale right now. If you just need to get some clients in the door, just get some clients in the door, okay? And don't worry about scaling the process. If you're looking at this and you're saying, hey, you know what? I know that we're going to be building a 7-8 figure type of company, and I know one of the first things I'm going to want to do is hand off this part of the process and the prospecting and the sales. So I'm actually more focused on scale at this point. Then maybe you want to consider something that's more process oriented. And that's where tools like tech, SaaS, automation, things like that come in. One word of warning though is most people worry about scale too early. Like as a rule of thumb, it is perfectly fine and very, very common to do things that don't scale, figure them out, and then figure out how to scale them later, right? But if you already know that you are focused on scale and you're trying to create repeatable processes, then what you may not want to start out with is doing highly personalized, very low volume, high touch type of sales. That's one of the hardest things to teach and to make repeatable, right? So think about how concerned you are at scale at this point. But we're really going to look back. We're going to say, okay, this is the channel, like this is where we want to be. And then generally speaking, what we're targeting is something between, high volume and personalized. Or, I talked to a client just the other day in a game plan session of our more hands-on program. And he said, what, I just, as a brand, I'm just trying to get to 5, 6, 700,000 as a solo. And what, I'm not that concerned about scale, and I want it to be personalized. Like I want it to be part of my brand that it is highly personalized. Cool. Like we can set up an outbound campaign that way. So think through some of these things, and I can't necessarily answer them for you, but hopefully these are helping you make some of these choices. Okay. Then the third thing we want to do is you've got to go get data. Okay. Like you've got to get your list, you've got to get your data from somewhere. And unlike warm outreach, we don't have data just sitting around on our phones. Okay. So we've got to go get a list. We've got to go get data from somewhere. And here you've got some options. The first thing you can do is you can buy or rent the list. Okay. And what I mean by that is you can go to some companies like Info USA. I think it's Data Axle now. You can actually just buy data straight up. Okay. They send you a list and it's yours. You can import it into your CRM and do whatever you want with it. Okay. They also, I think, allow you to rent data. And then there's companies like Apollo.io, Zoom Info, and Uplead, and others like that actually rent the data. In other words, it's a subscription. So you pay for a subscription to their software or to their platform. And within that, you actually get access to some of their data, and you can use it within their platform, or some of them allow you to export it and export it with limits, things like that. You can pay for the data though, whether you're buying it or renting it. Those are a couple sources, and we'll put some links in the notes below. You can borrow the list, right? Like borrowing the list is something more like Sales Navigator, like on LinkedIn, or working with some partner lists, things like that. Because on Sales Navigator, they don't want you to take that list and get it into your CRM, right? But they say, hey, so long as you're a client or a customer of ours, you can borrow this data while it's here. Now we'll talk a little bit about how you might be able to get that data, but that's an example of just borrowing data. You can go build the list, meaning you can go scrape data from the web. Okay, you can scrape data, meaning you can take data that's on the web and get it into your systems with manual scraping. You can grab their emails. There's different tools to get their contact information, get their phone numbers, things like that. You can go into, remember we talked about OPA, other people's audiences. You can go into groups, you can go into communities, you can go into Slack channels, things like that, and you can scrape that data if you want to. Now, keep in mind, you can also get booted from communities for doing that. They don't like their data getting scraped, but you can scrape it from public sources of data too, like Google. There's companies and BAs and people like that will go scrape data. You can do it manually, right? Like one-off. You can go through and get some data from Google. You can get them from events, things like that. So you can build a list with these different sources of data, depending on how you want to do that. Now, a few notes on this. The source will depend some on which channel and your strategy that you're going to work on, right? If you're going to use a higher volume strategy, chances are you need a bigger list to go after. And that's where like an Apollo.io becomes a really good solution, or a Zoom Info, which by the way is more expensive than most of them. But the channel and the strategy affect where you're going to get your list, which is why I can't necessarily tell you, hey, here's the one place to get your list, because if you're doing highly personalized, high touch strategies, then maybe you want to scrape it. Like then maybe it's okay to find 4, 5, 10 leads a day and do some personalized outreach. If you're doing automation on LinkedIn, you're going to need hundreds or thousands of leads, and you're gonna need a bigger source for it. Okay. The other thing to think about is, garbage in, garbage out. Okay. If you have a shitty list, it's going to result in shitty prospecting. Okay. So you want to find a source that is reliable, that's pretty good. In any cold outbound, some element of your list is not going to work, right? Like that's just the nature of the beast when you're doing cold outreach. But if you have garbage data, it's going to result in a lot of wasted time, maybe screwing up your domains if you're sending out emails, things like that. So try to get a reliable source and minimize the amount of garbage and not accurate data that you have on your list to the best that you can. And then one of the questions that I get asked a lot is, should I go quality or should I go quantity? And some part of that answer is based on, are you going personalized or are you going volume? But at the end of the day, you want both, right? Like that's what you've got to do. Now, here's the thing with outbound. To get good at outbound, you've got to put in reps, right? Like you need some volume. Even if you're doing personalized outreach, if you're doing one every 2 months, you're not going to get good at it. Good outbound requires some reps. It requires some repetition. It requires putting in the work so that you can get the feedback loop so you can improve. And a list of 10 people isn't going to do that for you, right? Like you're not going to get the chance to really put in the reps that you need to do well. So I would look for a list that's going to give you the opportunity to get the reps in, to measure how you're doing and make the improvements. But don't focus on getting a list that's so large that you don't know what to do with it, right? Or that you've got a bunch of garbage on it. Okay. Like if you get a list of 30,000 people and you're doing highly personalized outreach, okay, maybe how are we going to segment that? How would you target that down? How would you take 30,000 and make it a couple hundred? Okay. Like if I'm doing personalized emails, I'm looking for a couple hundred to get started. Like if I'm doing like personalized messaging to emails, if I'm doing, high volume automated LinkedIn in the DMs, I'm going to be looking for 2,000 to 3,000 to get started. Okay. So hopefully that gives you some guidance, but you've got different options here. And if you have any questions on where to get your source of data, drop them in the forum. We'll see if we can get you some feedback. Okay. So you get your data. Now, depending on where you get that list and what your approach is going to be, the next thing you want to do is probably clean your list. Okay. Now, when it comes to list cleaning, depending on your channel and depending on your strategy and depending on where you get the data, you've got different requirements here. But you want a really good source of data, like I was saying. Otherwise, you end up wasting a ton of time and a ton of money chasing people with bad information. So if you've got a high volume list, you're probably going to want to clean that before you start sending stuff out. So if you're going to high volume email, you want to do like some email authentication. Okay, so I can get my list. Now I want to bump it up against something that says, hey, can you scan this and tell me what we already know probably doesn't work? Or is there a way to ping it and see what works? So some tools to do that. A Mailgun is a good option. Zero Bounce, Never Bounce is a good option, and Kickbox. So these are just a few options that you can take that list and basically load it into their system and say, okay, help me make sure that this list of 5,000 has accurate emails, even if that means the list is now 4,500. Okay. Another option, if you're doing something that's a little bit more personalized, you can do manual cleaning. Okay. And you can grab VAs to do that, right? Like you can hop on Upwork or something like that and do some list cleaning. I know some businesses that actually pay someone to just make calls before they make the calls, basically, and just say, hey, calling and making sure the number connects and the company is the company. So that's one way to go about that. You can hire VAs to do that really, really inexpensively. And you may say like, gosh, why aren't we calling them twice? It is worth your time, right? Like if there's a chance that 20, 30% of the numbers or the people that are on your list aren't valid or aren't going to work, like that's 20, 30% of your time. So if you're putting in, 20, 30 calls, somewhat personalized, like you can save that, get that time back by just having somebody run through that list really quickly beforehand. And there's some third parties that do that. Like you can hire some vendors that knock this out for you. So if you go to one company to get your data, you can go to another company to clean the data and make sure that you're increasing the probability of connecting with the prospect that you actually want to connect with. Okay. So you've got your data, you clean your data. Now on the tech stack, here's the thing, like every one of these strategies has its own different tech stack requirements. Okay. When it comes to like the technology or the tools that you're using, if you're using high volume email, You're going to have to warm up domains. You're going to have a place where you buy different domains. You're going to have a platform to send emails, right? So you've got different tech requirements. If you're doing, cold calling, it may be as simple as just picking up your phone and making some calls, or maybe you've got to go, set up like a VoIP or get a dialer or, get some other tools to get ready to make calls at scale if you're going high volume. And if you're using automation for social selling, like if you're using LinkedIn, we use Dripify, and it's the tool that I recommend. We'll drop a link below, and that's actually part of the example that I'll use when I run through an example. But different strategies are going to have different tools, right? You're going to have different requirements, different things that go into that system, and you're going to have different options. Now, like I said, we're going to focus primarily on email and social selling. So when it comes to cold email, a couple tools that we recommend, Apollo.io, and that's actually a good place to get the data, to warm things up, and to send emails. Okay, Limlist is another one. Limlist is great for warming up and sending emails. And if you don't know what I mean when I say warm up, what I mean is if you're doing a lot of cold outbound, what you probably don't want to do is use the same domain that you use to send your day-to-day emails and everything else with clients and all of that you do high volume email, okay? Because the chances of getting flagged are really high. And then if your core domain gets flagged, then all your messages to your clients and even internally, shit like that just starts going to the spam filter. So what people do is they get other domains that look like theirs. So I may get like rayjgreen.co, and maybe I get raygreen.com, and maybe I get a couple of others that look and feel like rayjgreen.com, and I plug them in, and then they get warmed up, meaning they start sending emails to each other and to other places and making the domain not be brand new. Otherwise it gets flagged for spam. Okay. But that's also what I'm talking about when I'm saying, different tools require different things. That's high volume cold email. Okay. And these are a couple options for data and for warming things up and for getting some of those emails out, right? Like actually getting them warmed up and then sending them. On LinkedIn, like I said, Dripify is the one that we recommend. As of now, I'll change this if this ever changes, but it has been a couple of years that we've used it. They have a good development team. They have good customer service. They're actually very responsive. We've had hundreds of people use Dripify, and the most important thing when it comes to LinkedIn automation, at least for me and a lot of my clients, is the security of your account. Right? Like the last thing you want is your account to disappear or to get flagged or to get taken down. And we have had no instances of Dripify causing that, whereas a lot of fly-by-night companies and a lot of people just like throwing up new stuff without full development teams and customer service, things like that, I've seen them get a lot of accounts in trouble. So that's the one that we recommend. And up to now, I'll change this obviously if it ever happens, but we've had no one, not our accounts or no one in our client base has had those, and I have other friends that recommend it too. So a couple of recommendations on tools to get you started. Again, if you have questions on your specific setup, drop them in the forum. We'll see if we can help you. So you get your tech stack. Now I want you to set up some reporting. Okay, you want to set some goals and you want to set some KPIs to get started on this for a few reasons. One is they'll give you something to shoot for and keep pushing. It's just human nature that if we at least have a target, we are more likely to move in that direction. So setting some goals at the onset of this gives you something to shoot for. And when you sit down every day, every week, every month, whatever it is, to start doing your outreach, you have a target. Okay, having a target is a hell of a place to start. The other thing is they'll help you figure out where things aren't necessarily going right and fixing them. Okay, and this is really important when it comes to cold outbound outreach, because very rarely are you going to get everything dialed in immediately the first time. Very rarely the first time you go through this checklist and you say, all right, I'm picking my channel, I'm picking my strategy, is everything going to be perfect the first time, right? Like you've got your messaging perfect and everything else. So having some reports and having some baselines basically allows you to troubleshoot or diagnose where things aren't going right, and then you can just make changes, okay? The other thing about goals is they'll keep you honest about how much work you're really putting in, and they give you something to share with somebody else like myself when they're not working. So one of the first things we do in our other program is we say, cool. Like, let's see the report. How many inputs do we have here, right? Do we have enough volume? Do we have enough inputs to be getting the output that we want? All right. If we do, where's it going wrong? We're looking at the different metrics along the way and we're saying, okay, well, that's a good number. That's good. That's not converting. Maybe it's the messaging, right? Or maybe it's the delivery, or maybe it's, something like that. So keeps you honest and gives you something to share to help troubleshoot and diagnose problems. Now, there's a few things to think about when you're creating your KPIs, when you're creating your goals. There's basically three key elements. One is the data that you're starting with, right? Whether it's the raw data, like what am I starting with in terms of a universe of leads or people to go after. Then there's the activity, okay? This is the inputs, right? This is your work or the tools work, the automation, whatever it is that you have that is putting work into the system. And then there are the results. Okay, so you've got the data, the initial universe, then you've got the work that you put in, the activities, and then you have the results or the outputs from the activity that you put in. Now, here's a high level example of a scorecard that you could use, right? So you could start with leads. Again, that's the data. Start with leads. This is how much raw data you are actually starting with and the quantity of the list that you've got. Then you've got the outreach, right? This is your activity metric. Okay, this is the number of calls you made. This is the number of emails you sent. This is the number of connection requests that you sent, whatever that is. Then there's outreaches received. Okay, this is, I sent 100 emails, 95 were delivered, 5 bounced. Okay, because the email wasn't right, the person doesn't work there anymore, whatever it is. This is, I made 100 calls, but I only talked to, 70 people, gatekeepers, whatever it is, right? So you've got your outreaches, that's the total volume. Then you have the outreaches basically received. And to me, when I'm looking at this, one of the reasons I measured is it's a good indication of how good the data is, right? Like I can look at that and say, okay, well, if we're sending 100 emails and only 50 are getting received, right? That's a good place to start, okay? And then there's outreaches responded to. This is the number of emails replied to. This is the number of DMs that get replied to. This is the number of humans that you talk to if you're making cold calls. This, from my standpoint, this is a good baseline to have so that you can measure your actual sales conversion ratios, right? If I know this number of people that I'm talking to, like decision makers that I'm reaching on a phone, for example, then I can go, okay, well, the number of people that bought, I've now got a ratio that I can go, okay, we should be converting higher, or we're doing really well when we get people. Maybe we just need to get more people. Then there's meaningful conversations, okay? This is anything that starts to sound like a sales conversation, right? This is, you've talked to a decision maker and they've said, okay, can you send me some information? You've messaged somebody in the DMs and they've started to reply and answer some of your qualifying questions. This is, they responded to an email and they said, yeah, please, I'm interested. Go ahead and send me that report that you said you would send me, something like that, okay? So you've got your meaningful conversations. Then those turn into booked calls, which is pretty straightforward. Then those turn into people that show up to the booked calls that got scheduled, also straightforward. In some audiences, you may say, hey, 99% of my people show up. Not uncommon when you're talking about warm outreach. When you get into cold outreach, you find that the show rates on your booked calls tends to drop a little bit. So tracking that'll help you find out, like, hey, is our bottom of funnel, is it working? Can we tighten that up? And then, obviously the granddaddy of them all, it's the number of sales. This is the most straightforward one. It's money in the bank. And no, it's not a sale until there is money in the bank. If somebody says, I'm going to do this, let me get back with you next week. Next week is when you count that as a sale. Okay. But this is a scorecard that you can use to kind of get started and track your activity. And if we were to work with you further and you said, hey, I wanted to get some feedback on how we're doing, something like this is going to help me kind of identify, all right, this is where we can improve, or this is how we're doing relative to what we expect. Okay. Then we've got our scoreboard. So now we're going to create our messaging. And you could write an entire book on email messaging alone. And many really good books have been written. And that's to say nothing of messaging with social selling, or messaging on the phones, or messaging in groups and every other channel that's out there. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to give you some really tactical tips. I'm going to give you a couple of examples, and then I'm going to give you a list of resources if you want to go further on this. Right now, some tactical tips here. First is remember when you were messaging this, when you were doing cold outbound, you are not selling your service. You're selling the next step in the process. This is really, really important. If you are selling a high ticket service and you're trying to sell everything that you do and help them make a decision about all of that in one email, you are basically throwing out all the work that you've put in up to now out the door. All right, because it's not going to happen. People aren't going to read a cold email and say, I'm ready to buy right now. What they may be willing to do is say, I'm intrigued. Like, I'm willing to talk about this. I'm willing to learn about it. I'm willing to do some more research about it. So you're selling the next step. The goal is to pique enough interest with your messaging on the cold outreach that they have enough curiosity to continue the conversation with you. Okay, so the subject line of an email is selling what's in the email. The email is selling the next step in the process, not the whole service. Then when they get on a call with you, you'll work to diagnose and then you'll prescribe, but you're not doing all that in your initial outreach. So you want to craft messaging that's going to highlight the relevant pain points and makes it worthwhile for them to get on a call with you, right? So don't try to sell your whole solution in your messaging here. Another thing is deliver the minimum effective dose. The less, the better, period. Like some of the best cold emails and the best cold messages are just a few lines, okay? And I'll give you some examples, but you want it to be short enough that they can digest it in a very short period of time and then quickly determine whether it's worth their time to keep this conversation going. And frankly, if it's not, that's okay. That's actually good for you too. Like if they're not qualified or not in the market or not interested, it's actually better for them to be able to determine that very quickly than it is to prolong this thing and have unqualified or, people that aren't interested in your cycle. So in DMs, you're talking about a few lines. In cold emails, you want like less than 10 sentences. A long cold email, maybe 100 words, okay? It's not going to be paragraphs and paragraphs and paragraphs. In a cold call, like you've got 5 seconds basically to make an impact on them right away, to hook them. So just remember, when it comes to messaging, the less the better, right? Third thing is be very aware of what is called the curse of knowledge. This is actually from a book that's in the recommended books that's coming up here called Made to Stick. And they call the curse of knowledge basically what happens when you start to become an expert in something and you forget what it's like to not be an expert anymore, right? Like you now start talking over people's heads. You start using language that they don't use. You start explaining things in words that they don't use. You lose touch with what it's like to know the root cause of problems and how to fix all these problems and what it feels like to just feel the pain. Okay, like think about as a doctor, you walk into a doctor's office and if you say, my toe hurts, and they go into like all of the body parts in your foot and how the things work together, you're like, dude, my toe hurts. Okay, so you want to remember how they feel. You want to speak in their language. You want to join the conversation that's already happening in their head, right? As much as possible. I know it sounds creepy, but like think about what's the conversation they are having in their head. How can you join that conversation as opposed to trying to make this cold email show how much you know about all this stuff? Join the conversation that's already in their head and beware of the curse of knowledge and dive into that book when I recommend it here in just a minute. And then you want really clear next steps. You want your CTAs, your calls to action to be crystal clear. Like tell them exactly what you want them to do, make it easy and make it worth their while. All right. Make sure it's like, we know why you want them on a call. Why do they want to be on a call? So we want to make sure that it's clear what they need to do. It's easy to do it and it's worth their time. All right. And then we want to talk about what they want to talk about. Okay. Remind yourself what it is that they are using your service to actually get. Nobody wants a service just for the sake of a service, right? Like they want an outcome as a result of hiring you or hiring your company. And there's a Harvard marketing professor that used to say they're not buying a drill bit, they're buying a hole in the wall, right? Like you're selling the drill bit, but what they really want is a hole in the wall. There's actually Jim Edwards from a copywriting book. He takes it one step further. He says they don't even want the hole in the wall. They want the picture on the wall. Okay, so like do your best to really think about what is it that they want. Like if you're the engineer making the drill bit, sometimes that's very difficult to remember. This thing is going to help somebody put a picture on a wall. but do your best to get inside their head. Again, join the conversation that's in their head. Then don't take it personal, okay? Like, especially in the beginning, like, you're gonna try a bunch of different messaging. You're gonna test, and it's not about you, right? If it's not working, it's not about you. Like, don't take this personally. Treat it like a science experiment, right? Like, test, check different variables and tweak them as you go, but don't get married to any specific part of this process. Just look at it as science, right? Like, I'm not going to take this personally. I'm going to look at this. If my messaging isn't resonating, I just need to change it, right? It doesn't matter whether I like it. It doesn't matter whether I think it lands or not. It doesn't matter if I think this offer is perfect. What matters is, do they? And if they don't, then I need to change something. So don't take it personally. And then it's not one and done, okay? Like, most cold outbound messaging requires repetition of some sort, right? If you send one cold email, you're not going to get the same results that you would if you sent 3. Okay, I'm not saying like you've got to annoy people with 72 spam emails, but don't send one. Don't make one phone call. Like, I can tell you from working in a dozen industries, the average on a call list is between 3 and 4 calls per number that's on a list. So I have a list of 100 people on it. I'm going to consider that list done when 350 calls have been made on it. Okay, so use that mindset. It's not go through these once. Repetition. That's what marketing is. So plan in advance that you're going to have different messages go out. If your service really works, right? If you really know that you deliver a transformation, if you improve their lives, if you improve their business, then you're helping them. And most people are busy, right? Like, your one email may not resonate. I may not even open it the first time. Maybe if I see it the second or the third time, I might open it. So keep that in mind. When it comes to cold outbound, repetition is part of the process. So let's get into a couple of examples here. Now, what I just mocked up an example. If I was doing a cold outbound message on productization, right, which would be one of the pain points that we target. So there's different pain points within our program that we will target people on, and one of them is productization, and that is, hey, I've got work, but I'm just overwhelmed, right? It's really chaotic, and I need to systematize, I need to productize so that I can take on more clients, but not have it mean more time, okay? So we may send something that says, hey, ready to turn your expertise into a scalable asset. Hey, Joe, I'm Ray. I help seasoned consultants like you turn their expertise into scalable systems. No fluff, just the hard-hitting stuff that gets results. Ever thought about hitting that elusive 7-figure mark while still having time for life's good things? That's my jam. Let's chat. How does your schedule look this week for a quick 15-minute call? Right? Short, simple, to the point. Is this messaging perfect? No, it's probably not perfect, but it's concise, it's clear, it hits on a pain point, and it tries to join the conversation that's in their head. Give you another quick example here. Drowning in client work. Hey, Joe, Ray here. I've been where you are, swamped with client work and wishing I could clone myself. Sound familiar? Here's the deal. I teach folks like you how to scale your consultancy without burning out. I'm talking automated client acquisition and productizing your service, the whole shebang. If you're up for it, let's chat. I've got some strategies that'll blow your mind. Got 15 minutes next week or this week. Right? Again, concise, clear, to the point, and succinct. And it's specific to a pain point, right? Like the productization thing. If we were targeting, for example, lack of clarity, right? Like, I'm working really hard. I'm not really sure what I'm building. I've got 17 offers for 17 different clients. I would work in some different messaging. If we were targeting lead gen, we would work in something else. If we were targeting the sales process, we would say something else. But we're looking to join the conversation that's in their head about a specific pain point that they have that we can then bring them on, right? Got a couple of other examples here. Like, this is actually not mine. This is just an email that I got. And I said, like, this kind of fits the script. Again, is it perfect? No. You can make some improvements to this, but look at the length, look at how to the point it is, look at how there's a CTA, look at how clear it is, look at how it tries to hit on a pain point. This is another one that I got, similar. It has a good question out of the gates, and if I'm not in that market, hey, I just qualify myself out really quickly. Now, there is one thing I want to point out here. You'll notice there's these little purple things on this email and on the last one. This is a tool that I have installed on my computer called Lavender, and it helps you write cold emails. They have a free version, they have a paid version. The free version works really well. It uses AI, and it'll grade your emails. So go ahead and plug that in. I use Chrome, and it works really well. So, when I start to write an email, it can tell me, hey, this isn't mobile optimized, or this is long block text and probably sucks, right? Like, they have better ways of saying it. But That's a good resource. We'll link to that below as well. But let's say we're not doing email. Let's say you're doing personalized LinkedIn and you want to use some voice messages. Well, what's your messaging on that? Hey, Joe, it's Ray. Look, I help top tier consultants and coaches like you build systems that help you scale to 7 figures without losing your mind. I've actually got a 5-step roadmap. I'd be happy to give it to you even if we don't work together, like no sweat. Would it be worth 15 minutes just to walk you through it? Just let me know. I can find some time and we'll make it happen. Look forward to talking. Thanks, Joe. Right? Something quick, to the point, and you put these out there. Now, this actually isn't that personalized. I mean, this just says the industry, and like it's actually consultants and coaches. So if I was actually writing like a really targeted, personalized one, I might spend a few minutes and then reference something on their profile and weave in this part of it. So I might have this part of it pre-written and then have 1 sentence or 2 sentences real quick that I reference before I hit record. But just note on the LinkedIn voice messages, I think you've got like 59 seconds to do this. So just an example. And then when it comes to actual DMs, like actual direct messages, we do a lot of this with clients. And we've got a pretty simple framework. It's basically you thank them, introduce them, tell them, ask them, disarm them, and then sign off. And this is for fairly direct cold outbound, meaning, you can do cold outbound on DMs, on social selling that's very slow to sell, meaning you're just building your audience, right? Like you're just like, hey, just looking to connect with other people, and I'm going to let my content do the work for me, right? I'm going to let my headline do the work for me. So I'm just going to set up some automation and start reaching out to people to connect, and then I'm not going to sell them in the DMs. And if we talk on the DMs, I'm not going to be salesy at all. Okay, that's one way to do DMs. And that's how I did DMs for a long time. Then there's a more direct approach where you're saying, you know what, I'm in client acquisition mode and we are prospecting, and this is cold outreach, not necessarily to build an audience, but I'm here to sell shit. Okay. When you're using that type of approach, not spammy, not pitch slapping, like where you pitch them right after you connect, but still direct. Okay. If you're using that approach and you want to get clients faster, and this is more of a client acquisition system than it is audience building and expecting people to come in on inbound, then this is the framework that we've got. And what it means is, thank them, like, hey, thanks for linking in. Thanks for connecting on LinkedIn. I'm Ray from Repeatable Revenue. We specialize in scaling businesses to 7 figures. Are you free for a 15-minute call this week to explore how we could help you? If you're swamped, no sweat, just let me know. Either way, look forward to building on the connection, or thanks for considering, or catch you later, right? Like something that says, thanks for connecting. This is who I am. This is what I do. Like this is my power sentence. This is what I do. Is that on your radar? If not, no sweat. See you later. Okay. Here's an example, one that we did recently with one of our clients in our other program. And it's, hey, thanks for connecting. We help. And she's in the green tech sustainability space. So this was the format that we gave her. Obviously she fills this in. But we help green tech businesses create strategic narratives that shape their industry, drive revenue, and aligns teams. Is that anything that's on your radar right now? If it's not a priority, no problem at all. Allison, right? Follows the framework, okay? And we find that works really well. And the thing that people like about this, by the way, is they can opt out, right? Like people know if you're doing the fake rapport building. Like if you're on DMs to sell. Like just do it the right way, but sell. If you're on DMs to build your audience, build your audience. But don't pretend you're here to connect with people and build your network and slyly be trying to sell them. All right? Like it doesn't work. People see right through it, the fake rapport building, shit like that. If you're selling, we find a slightly more direct approach works better because people can say, nope, not on my radar. And it's better for you. It's better for them. It's better for you. And then they still get to see your content and maybe it doesn't work. Now, a few resources if you want to dive deeper on this, because there's a lot that goes into the psychology of copy. There's a lot that goes into copywriting and crafting good messages, more than I could possibly teach right now. So a few resources if you want to dive a little bit deeper. One is a website called Really Good Emails. And what is the collection of emails? And if you want to sign up for their newsletter, they deliver you really good emails. Easy enough. Then there's Copy Hackers. And they have a terrific blog. It's free, and you can dive into that, get a ton of great copy tips. Same with QuickMail, their blog. Every time I go to QuickMail's blog, they have like almost a manifesto of some sort, some guide that isn't even gated with emails. And every time I've been there, I'm like, man, this is like last time I was there was one on cold emails that I'll actually link to below. But it's more than a blog. It's a really valuable resource that you can dive deeper into all this on. And then some books that I recommend: The Ultimate Sales Letter by the one and only Dan Kennedy. And he's widely known as one of the most profitable copywriters that's out there in terms of writing conversion-oriented copy. Very, very well skilled. In that book, you'll see that there's some stuff that's dated in it, right? Like there's a lot about direct mail. When you're reading that, it doesn't make it less relevant. Just change the channel, right? So when he's talking about what you do in the envelope, think about the subject line of an email. When he's talking about what to do in a letter, think about what you're going to put in the body of an email. Okay, so just change the channel, but the psychology is still very much the same. And he talks a lot about joining the conversation that's in people's heads. Made to Stick. I cannot recommend this book enough if you are an expert in your field, because we are oftentimes unaware of the change that happens in our head when we become an expert and we lose touch with the people whose problems we are solving in the way that they communicate things and the way that we process them in our head. Okay, there's something we call the chocolate broccoli, right? Like where you have what they want and what they need. A lot of times when you do client work, you realize, hey, what our clients are asking for isn't always what they need. And that's where we get into like the chocolate broccoli. We've got to deliver what they want while also delivering what they need. What happens in marketing is oftentimes we're talking about the broccoli. We're talking about the root cause of solutions. Meanwhile, they're talking about the chocolate. They're talking about the pains and the symptoms of stuff. We want to talk about why things are happening. They just want to talk about the symptom. We want to talk about the science around the foot, and the person that comes into our office just wants to talk about their hurt toe. Okay, Made to Stick, really, really good book for changing your perspective on this. Scientific Advertising. This is a classic by Claude Hopkins, also very, very well-known copywriter, and this is a very, very well-known book. Breakthrough Advertising, also another professional copywriter, great book as well. And then the godfather of copywriting, as we know it today, is David Ogilvy, and he has a terrific book, Ogilvy, on advertising. So these are some resources to dive into. Again, it's more in-depth than I can cover here, but I hope I've covered the basics and enough to get you rolling. Don't feel like you've got to digest all these resources to get going, though. Like, don't let that be an excuse. Like, you know what, I'm going to read all these books, I'm going to go through these blogs, and I've got to be a professional copywriter before I get going. No, the best lessons that you're going to learn on copywriting are going to happen with the responses that you're getting from your market. So you've got to get stuff out there. But these are great resources. Just keep fresh and keep thinking about. If you only pick one, I recommend Made to Stick. Okay. Then we're going to start our outreach. That's right. We're going to hit go. There's no more planning. We've just got to start doing this, right? Like insight leads to action more than action leads to insight. This is why I don't want you to get hung up on becoming an expert copywriter first. You'll be a very good copywriter by the end of this, I promise you, if you're listening to the data and responding. So you've got to start, right? Like imperfect action is perfectly okay. Outbound is a lot of OJT, right? It's a lot of on-the-job training. You've just got to get going. So at this point, we've made some decisions. We've set up our tech stack. We've set up the scoreboard. We've got our messaging together. Now we've got to get it out into the wild, all right? And then we're going to measure every single day, right? Like we're going to go back to that scoreboard, to that scorecard. We're going to update our data. We're going to track our activity. We're going to track our results. And with that data, we're going to look at it. We're going to review it. We're going to optimize it. We're going to constantly be iterating based on what we see in the measurement, right? We're going to be asking questions like, okay, what's working? What isn't? Our email's bouncing. Okay, well then we've got to clean the list. Right? Are they getting there? Like they're getting delivered, but they're not opening it, right? Then we've got to change the subject line. Okay, well they're opening it, but they're not doing anything, right? Well then let's change the copy. They're booking calls, but they aren't qualified. Like the people that are showing up aren't. Okay, let's go back to the data, right? Like again, this is a science. It's not completely art. We're going to go through. We're going to make some assumptions. We're going to put in a hypothesis out to market. Then we're going to change that shit. Right? We're going to tweak it. Don't take things personally. They aren't rejecting you. They're just rejecting your offer. It's just not positioned properly. And that means you need to make some changes. And the other thing to think about is as a science experiment, we want to change one variable at a time. Like don't go try to change everything at a time. If you're doing personal variable at a time, one of the best salespeople that I ever knew used to have one word and okay, got it. And then he would tweak another word. And after a few weeks, the thing would look like a political speech, right? That's outbound is it will work with enough volume, with enough measure, will work if you stick with it and if you're making changes. And if you want some numbers here, like if you're doing cold email, if you're not getting 95% on your response rates, your booked calls, your unsubscribed, LinkedIn manual. So this is manual, like personal lines to shoot for, and then automation if you're hitting or now. That's the framework. Now what I want to do is I want to walk you through that. Cool.